Hey, this is Mr. Aiden. This is my 8th grade science class, but if you are taking biology or you're even going into some college biology, this might be helpful. This is stage 2 of cellular respiration called the electron transport. Stage 2, which is called the electron transport. So let's do a little quick review here. Remember, pre-stage 1 happened in the cytoplasm, and that was an anaerobic process, which means we did not need oxygen gas. And that's where glucose ended up breaking down. We call that glycolysis. That's pre-stage 1. Glucose ended up breaking down into 2, 3 carbon molecules. If you remember, it ended up being what's called pyruvic acid. And that pyruvic acid even gets broken down even more. Now, it also produces a little bit of energy for stage 2. And it also produces about 2 molecules of ATP, not enough to survive. And then in the anaerobic process in the matrix, we call that the Krebs cycle. That was stage 1. And what did the Krebs cycle make us? It made us 2 ATP molecules. It made us a bunch of carbon dioxide, 6 carbon dioxide molecules, and a lot of energy for stage 2. Stage 2 is called the electron transport, which will be about today's video. Electron transport is aerobic, which means we need oxygen gas, don't we? We need oxygen gas. I can't even pull it up here. There we go. All right, there we go. Oxygen gas. Good. And that is in the mitochondrial membrane. And what do we get out of it? We get 34 molecules of ATP, and we get some water, 6 molecules of water, 6 moles of water. And so that 34 ATP powers the entire cell and all of its processes. So let's do a review again. So if you remember what happened in pre-stage 1 in glycolysis, we had pyruvic acid being formed from our glucose, and our pyruvic acid from glycolysis in stage 1 ended up giving off some carbon dioxide. And if it gives off a carbon, we're left with 2 carbon molecule. This 2 carbon molecule combined with coenzyme A to become what we call acetyl CoA, which ends up going on to the citric acid cycle. We also made some NADH from NAD+, which was a high energy molecule that is going to stage 2 as well. This acetyl CoA ends up coming into the Krebs cycle, or what we call the citric acid cycle. And it loses a carbon dioxide it loses the coenzyme A, and it is combining with a 4 carbon molecule. So this 2 carbons attached to the CoA, it loses the coenzyme A, and these 4 carbons and these 2 carbons combine together to make what we call citric acid. Now citric acid gives off carbon dioxide, and when it gives off carbon dioxide, it also gives off some energy in NADH, which came from NAD+. So 6 carbons, citric acid, loses a carbon and becomes 5 carbons, doesn't it? It loses another carbon dioxide, it loses some little bit of ATP, and it loses another NADH. Where does the NADH come from? The NAD+. Where does the ATP come from? It comes from the ADP combining with a phosphorus, and what do you know? We become a 4 carbon molecule. This 4 carbon molecule loses some more energy. It loses some more energy in the form of NADH. And that came from NAD+. And that 4 carbon molecule rearranged itself into something a little bit simpler, a little bit lower potential energy, 4 carbon molecule. And we have FAD becoming FADH2. And this 4 carbon molecule becomes something new to combine again with the acetyl CoA. After it loses CoA, again, it's a cycle. It's a cycle. Cycles cannot be evolved. Cycles cannot happen over time. All of these things, and this is, even though this looks pretty complex, this is a rudimentary look at the Krebs cycle. This has to happen in order to supply the electron transport chain with enough energy in order to make all the energy that you need for every cell in your entire body. It is an absolutely amazing process by our divine creator of God. So now we're going to go to what we call the electron transport chain, stage 2. Stage 2. And so we're going to look a little bit more in detail of what's happening. Now, if you remember, what did we have coming in from the matrix, from the Krebs cycle. We had a bunch of NADH and we had a little bit of FADH2. Well, guess what this did? This NADH and this FADH2, it became NAD plus and FAD. So just take a look. If NADH becomes NAD plus and FADH2 becomes FAD, that means we're losing some hydrogens, aren't we? We're losing some hydrogens, and this hydrogens is going across the inner membrane and into the inner membrane space. And you can see this hydrogen here and this hydrogen here and this hydrogen here gets kind of pushed down this somewhat chain, okay, as it goes across this inner membrane. It also takes and supplies the electrons in this electron pathway. Looks like a little bit of a conveyor belt. Doesn't look like something that would evolve over time. It is a very precise functioning motor, and it produces high energy electrons that move about this, what we call an electron transport chain. So again, the NADH is a high energy molecule. The FADH2 is a high energy molecule. It goes down to NAD plus and FAD, in which goes to a lower potential energy, and that energy is always conserved. It goes into all of the electrons. And also atoms are always conserved, which means we lose all the H's, the H pluses, into what we call stage 2, or the electron transport chain. So this is where we are so far. We have our our H plus here. Now what happens here is kind of interesting. We have some H plus here, and this H plus ends up going across an amazing enzyme called ATP synthase. We've read about ATP synthase. This ATP synthase is one of the most amazing motors. It is a design feature which is absolutely amazing, and it funnels in some H plus over here. It funnels in some H plus. Now the amazing thing as well is we have oxygen gas. Remember, it is an aerobic process, which means oxygen gas is coming into the system. And what do we also have on this side is we have H plus. What happens when we have O2 and we have H plus and we have electrons that are energizing this is we make a bunch of water, don't we? A bunch of water. The also cool thing is this. We have a bunch of ADP and we have a bunch of phosphorus, which combine together to make 34 molecules of ATP, and it is the 34 molecules of ATP that comes out of the electron transport chain, which basically fuels all of your cells. And so the amazing thing about the electron transport chain in detail is the net result at the end of the day. We made 6 water molecules, 6 moles of water, and up to 34 ATP molecules, and those ATP molecules again fuel the entire cell's functioning processes. It's the powerhouse of the cell. And so let's do a little quick review here of our electron transport chain. We have again NADH and we have FADH2 coming into our system from stage 1, from the Krebs cycle. This NADH becomes NAD plus, and this FADH2 becomes FAD, which means it loses a bunch of H pluses, a bunch of protons. And these protons, these H pluses, go across the membrane right there. It also energizes electrons with the energy that we have to go along the electron transport chain. And so as these electrons come along the electron transport chain, it is fueling, it is energizing this entire system of everything that's happening across this electron transport chain. And what do you know is we have an amazing enzyme called ATP synthase. It is so amazingly designed that this H plus comes across through this channel and fills up a little bit of a gradient on the other side. And what do you know? We have oxygen gas coming in because it's an aerobic system, combining with the H plus to make 6 moles or 6 molecules of water. And we also have ADP combining with phosphorus to become 34 molecules of ATP, and that is the electron transport chain. Stage 2 of cellular respiration.